I mean, again, it's physical. The whistle's not going our way, and then I see her just get run over, right? Like, that's an offensive foul. Like, she's boxing out and just getting absolutely run over. And
defense doesn't lie. Numbers can deceive, highlight reels can distract, but when the lights are bright and the pressure mounts, defense always tells the truth. And against the Seattle Storm, the truth about Paige Bueckers was impossible to ignore. Seattle's coach, Noel Quinn, wasn't shy. Before tip-off, she made it clear, we're going to be physical with Paige. We're going to give her Caitlin Clark treatment. That meant no space, no rhythm, no easy shots. Instead of letting her float into her comfort zones, Seattle trapped her on ball screens, sent double teams early, and bodied her every time she tried to attack. They cut off her mid-range. They crowded her dribbles. They made her think twice before every move. And the result? She froze. This wasn't the Paige fans had seen against the Sparks. Gone was the smooth efficiency, the soft pull-up jumper, the calm orchestration of offense. In its place was hesitation, panic, and retreat. 11 points, 0 assists, 2 for 11 shooting. She didn't just miss shots, she disappeared from the game plan entirely. Every time she was blitzed, she gave up the ball and rarely fought to get it back. For someone hyped as the face of the league, she looked more like a role player overwhelmed by the moment. Now compare this to Caitlin Clark. For over a year, Clark has faced this same treatment night after night. Blitzes, doubles, physicality teams have built entire scouting reports around shutting her down. And yet she continues to deliver, bending defenses, creating assists out of thin air, and still scoring at a high level. Where Paige shrank, Clark shines. Where Paige hesitated, Clark attacks. The contrast is night and day. What Seattle proved is that Paige's numbers were built in a protective bubble. When the bubble burst, her game collapsed with it. Defense stripped away the illusion and left fans staring at a player unprepared for stardom. For the WNBA, this was a turning point, because once the defensive blueprint is out there, it doesn't go away. Every team in the league saw what Seattle did, and now, every matchup going forward will test whether Paige can adapt or whether she'll crumble again. Defense doesn't just stop players, it exposes them. And against the Storm, Paige Bueckers wasn't exposed as the next Caitlin Clark. She was exposed as a player not ready for the role the media forced onto her. Numbers can tell a story, but without context, they can also tell a lie. And for Paige Bueckers, the lie was simple: efficiency. For months, analysts paraded her shooting percentage as proof she was better than Caitlin Clark. But when you dig deeper, you see the truth, their shots, their challenges, and their circumstances couldn't be more different. Paige came into the league shooting a smooth 47.4% from the field. Clark, by comparison, sat at 41.7% in her rookie year. On paper, it looked obvious. The media rushed to proclaim that Paige was the more polished scorer, the more efficient player, the one better suited for the professional game. But that conclusion was built on sand. Why? Because not all shots are created equal. Let's look at Caitlin Clark's reality. She is the primary target of every defense she faces. Teams pick her up full court. She gets blitzed off screens. She's taking step-back threes from 28 feet, drives into double teams, and finishes through contact that often doesn't even draw a whistle. Her efficiency isn't low. It's a miracle. It's as high as it is, considering the punishment she endures. Now look at Paige. For most of her rookie season, she was given space. Defenders rotated late. She found open mid-range jumpers, spot-up looks, and soft defensive coverage. Of course, her percentages looked great. She wasn't playing under the same intensity, but then Seattle came along. They closed out hard, they doubled her, they trapped her. And suddenly, her efficient numbers disintegrated. 2 makes on 11 attempts. That's not just bad luck, it's exposure. This is why context matters. Clark's efficiency came under relentless fire. Paige's came under protective conditions. Strip away that protection, and the illusion collapses. It's like comparing a soldier training with blanks to one fighting in live combat. Sure, the training looks clean and polished, but when the bullets start flying, only one proves they can survive. And that's the story. The numbers without context were hiding. Paige's percentages weren't proof of greatness, they were proof she hadn't been tested. Seattle gave her the test, and she failed. Meanwhile, Clark has been passing that test every night since her debut. The difference? Clark's numbers are earned through fire. Paige's were built in comfort. And comfort never makes legends. Superstars don't just fill stat sheets, they change the air in the room, the energy in the building, and the trajectory of entire franchises. And when you compare Caitlin Clark's transformative impact to Paige Bueckers' quiet presence, the gulf is undeniable. Let's start with Clark. From the moment she stepped onto a WNBA court, she altered everything. Ticket sales exploded. Games sold out arenas that hadn't been full in years. Road crowds showed up just to see her play, creating a phenomenon where every Fever away game felt like a home game. TV ratings shattered records, networks began shifting coverage, adjusting primetime slots, All because one rookie had turned women's basketball into appointment viewing. That's not hype, that's impact you can measure in dollars, viewership, and cultural conversation. Now, contrast that with Paige. Yes, she had hype coming in, especially from her UConn days. But did she move the needle in the same way? Did fans flood arenas coast to coast just to see her? Did opposing franchises double their ticket revenue when she came to town? The reality is simple. No. Her presence has been felt, but not transformative. She didn't become the gravitational force of the league. She became a talented player on a roster, not the epicenter of the sport. And here's the kicker. Clark's impact isn't just off the court, it bleeds into every possession on the court. Defenses don't just guard her, they orbit around her. Teams tilt their entire scheme toward her, leaving others open. She bends defenses the way only legends do. Meanwhile, Seattle showed us how Paige looks when teams apply that same respect. Instead of bending defenses, she broke under them. Instead of elevating teammates, she vanished. What makes this contrast even more glaring is how Clark thrives in the weight of expectation. She doesn't just carry the fever, she carries the WNBA's growth. And somehow, under that pressure, she produces. Paige, meanwhile, had pressure from the media and failed her first true trial. Fans noticed, players noticed, the league noticed. Because impact isn't about one 44-point explosion against weak defense. It's about how you change the game, night after night, with everyone watching. Clark is a movement. Paige is a moment. And history doesn't remember moments. It remembers movement. Sometimes, the biggest battles in sports aren't fought on the court. They're fabricated in headlines, built in boardrooms, and sold to fans like reality TV. And the so-called rivalry between Paige Bueckers and Caitlin Clark is the clearest example yet of a storyline the media wanted, not the one reality gave us. Let's be honest. Clark has been the face of women's basketball for years now. She owned college hoops, then stormed into the WNBA and transformed it into a cultural event. Her numbers, her highlights, her impact, they spoke for themselves. But for networks and media outlets, that wasn't enough. They wanted drama. They wanted Clark versus somebody. And when Paige Bueckers entered the league, they saw an opportunity. Suddenly, headlines screamed, "Is Paige actually better than Caitlin?" Bueckers' efficiency proves she's the superior rookie. Analysts compared their percentages out of context, clipped highlight reels that favored Paige, and ran with narratives designed to spark debates. But here's the problem. Reality never matched the hype. Paige wasn't rewriting record books. She wasn't drawing sellout crowds nationwide. She wasn't bending defenses into knots every single night. But the media needed her to be Clark's rival, so they twisted every angle to make it seem true. This manufactured rivalry did more than just sell headlines, it misled fans. Casual viewers were told to believe Paige was outshining Clark, when in truth, she was playing under less pressure, against softer defenses, and producing under circumstances Clark would never be gifted. When Seattle finally exposed her, the illusion collapsed. The same voices who propped her up went silent. Or, worse, pretended they hadn't been pushing the comparison in the first place. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we need to confront a scandal hiding in plain sight. What if I told you the WNBA's so-called next big thing, Paige Bueckers, was nothing more than a media creation? That the story of her being the heir to Caitlin Clark's throne was never rooted in reality, but in television contracts, headlines, and a desperate attempt to manufacture drama? This isn't just about basketball anymore, it's about how easily fans can be sold a hoax. For months, mainstream outlets have fed audiences the idea that Paige Bueckers was destined to replace Caitlin Clark as the face of women's basketball. ESPN segments declared her more polished. Analysts obsessed over her efficiency. Social media flooded with highlight reels designed to make Paige look like she had already surpassed Clark. And yet, where was the proof? Where was the evidence that she could endure the same defensive gauntlets, the same physical targeting, the same relentless spotlight that Caitlin Clark walked into from her very first professional game? Instead, Paige was given a smooth runway, wide open shots, defenders laid on rotations, a red carpet treatment that padded her numbers and built the illusion of dominance. To the casual fan, it looked like the next superstar was born. To seasoned analysts, it looked suspiciously like the league and media were forcing a rivalry that did not exist. The problem with manufactured hype is that eventually, it collides with the truth. And in Paige's case, that collision came faster and harder than anyone expected. Paige wasn't crowned by her performance, she was crowned by a narrative. And when the curtain was pulled back, fans saw what they should have realized all along. Caitlin Clark is not just another player to be duplicated. She is a once-in-a-generation phenomenon. By trying to build Paige into something she was not, the WNBA and ESPN only set her up for a fall, and Seattle delivered it. Viewers, mark this down. On August 20, 2025, the Paige Bueckers hype machine didn't just slow down, it imploded in front of a national audience. For months, we've been told she's the savior, the chosen one, the face of the league. But one team, the Seattle Storm, pulled the plug on the illusion and exposed Paige in a way that no box score spin, no ESPN highlight package, and no social media edit could ever cover up. This wasn't a stumble, this was a demolition. Let's look at the facts. Paige came into Seattle fresh off her so-called coronation game. 44 points against the Sparks, shooting over 80%. The media treated it like she'd arrived at superstardom. But here's the thing, the Sparks barely played defense. They gave her wide open mid-range looks, allowed her to go one-on-one at will, and made zero adjustments. It was a glorified scrimmage dressed up as greatness. Seattle, however, had other plans. Coach Noel Quinn made it crystal clear before the opening tip. Paige was going to get the Caitlin Clark treatment. That meant physical play, traps, double teams, blitzes from the very first dribble. Seattle didn't roll out a red carpet, they rolled out a defensive brick wall. And the result, Paige Bueckers shriveled. 11 points, 2 for 11 shooting, 0 assists, 2 rebounds. That wasn't just an off night. That was a full exposure of someone unprepared for elite level defense. Remember, this is the same player hyped as fundamentally sound, efficient, and WNBA ready. But when finally treated like the superstar she was billed to be, her game evaporated in real time. Fans at home saw it. Social media lit up instantly. This is the next Caitlin Clark? This is the face of the league? The Storm not only beat Paige, they embarrassed her. They took the shiny, polished narrative the media had been selling and shredded it to pieces on live television. What's worse, they created the blueprint. Every team in the WNBA now has the tape. Blitz her, body her, make her uncomfortable, and watch her fold. Seattle didn't just hand Paige her worst night as a pro. They exposed the hoax. They showed the world that you can't crown a player off hand-picked highlights and soft matchups. And in doing so, they proved once and for all that Caitlin Clark stands alone. Here's the truth, and it's not up for debate. Paige Bueckers faced one game of real defensive heat and folded. Caitlin Clark has lived in that furnace since her first professional dribble, and yet the media dares to compare them? That's not analysis, it's malpractice. From day one, Caitlin Clark didn't just enter the WNBA, she became the target. Teams circled her name on scouting reports with one directive: make her life miserable. The Chicago Sky practically turned it into a team hobby, accounting for the vast majority of flagrant fouls committed against her. In fact, numbers don't lie. 17% of all flagrant fouls in the 2024 season were against Caitlin Clark alone. Think about that. One player absorbing nearly 1/5 of the league's most violent plays. She wasn't just defended, she was hunted. And yet, under that avalanche of physicality, Clark thrived. She averaged nearly 20 points, over 8 assists, and almost 6 rebounds a night, all while dragging the Indiana Fever from irrelevance into playoff contention. She played through hacks, elbows, bruises, and constant double teams. Defenders didn't give her space. They gave her war, and she responded by breaking records, selling out arenas, and becoming the biggest name in women's basketball. Now contrast that with Paige. Until Seattle, she'd been coasting. Defenses gave her room to operate, rotations were late, and contact was minimal. It was almost as if opponents were told not to treat her like a star. The result? Pretty numbers that looked polished on paper. But when Seattle finally flipped the script and gave her the Clark treatment, Paige collapsed into a ghost of the player she was supposed to be. That's the difference between hype and reality. Caitlin Clark took her rookie season Storm head-on, embraced the challenge, and grew stronger. Paige faced one night of it and vanished. If Clark is forged steel, Paige looked like glass. And no amount of ESPN storytelling can erase that contrast. Sometimes numbers lie. Sometimes a box score tells you everything you want to hear, but hides the truth you need to see. And Paige Bueckers' 44-point explosion against the Los Angeles Sparks? That, ladies and gentlemen, was the biggest mirage in modern WNBA coverage. Here's what really happened. Paige dropped 44 points on 80% shooting. On the surface, it looked historic, something out of a video game. ESPN couldn't wait to crown her. Social media exploded with takes that she was already surpassing Caitlin Clark. The hype reached fever pitch. But did anyone stop and watch the context of that game? The Sparks played defense in name only. They allowed her one-on-one isolation in the mid-range. They let her post up with zero help. They rotated late, gave her open looks, and essentially rolled out the red carpet for her to put on a scoring clinic. Sure, give credit where it's due, 44 points on 80% shooting is impressive under any circumstance. But let's not confuse a glorified scrimmage with proof of superstardom. That performance didn't happen under pressure. It didn't happen against traps, blitzes, or defensive schemes designed to take her out of the game. It happened because the Sparks treated Paige like an ordinary scorer and gave her all the room she wanted. And this is where the problem begins. The media took that single outburst and used it as evidence that she was more efficient, more polished, and more WNBA ready than Caitlin Clark. But basketball isn't played in one-night snapshots. It's played across seasons, under pressure when defenses lock in. And when Seattle locked in just days later, Paige didn't even look like the same player. 11 points, 2 for 11 shooting, 0 assists. The 44-point arrival turned into a harsh reality check overnight. This is why fans are angry. Not because Paige is untalented, but because they were being sold a false product. They were told she was the real deal because of one flashy box score. But greatness is proven in the fire, not in the comfort zone. Clark's fire has burned since her first WNBA minute. Paige's spark fizzled the moment defenses decided to actually guard her. The 44-point game wasn't a coronation, it was a mirage. And the Seattle Storm exposed it for what it was. A stat-padding spectacle, not a superstar statement. And here's the irony. By trying to force a rivalry, the media didn't elevate Paige, they set her up to fall. Because when you're marketed as Clark's equal and then crumble on the big stage, the backlash hits 10 times harder. Fans don't forget the headlines. They don't forget the hype. And when it doesn't match reality, the disappointment becomes louder than the initial praise. The truth is, rivalries in sports can't be manufactured. They have to be earned. Magic and Bird didn't need ESPN to convince people they were rivals. They proved it on the court. Clark hasn't found her rival yet because no one has matched her impact. And until that day comes, any attempt to force the narrative will only end the way Paige's story has exposure, embarrassment, and a reminder that hype without substance always collapses under the weight of reality. Every career, every legacy, every superstar has that one game, the one where the mask comes off, where the hype gets stripped away, and the truth is revealed. For Paige Bueckers, that game was against Seattle. And while her performance exposed her flaws, it also exposed something bigger, the way we judge greatness in sports and the dangerous shortcuts we take in building stars. Exposure is painful, but it's also clarifying. Paige's 2 for 11 wasn't just a bad night, it was a spotlight on the gap between comfort and conflict. Up until that point, she'd been living in a bubble built by favorable matchups, protective defenses, and a media eager to crown her. But exposure doesn't care about narratives. It comes when the game speeds up, when opponents stop giving you respect and start giving you pressure, when your strengths are met with equal force. That's when the truth comes out. And the truth about Paige is simple. She wasn't ready. Ready for the doubles, ready for the intensity. Ready for the moment when defenses treat you like the franchise player the media insists you are. That's not an insult, it's a reality check, one that every athlete eventually faces. But while most rookies are allowed to grow into that stage, Paige was thrust there prematurely because of the spotlight the media put on her. Exposure punished her not only for her flaws, but for the unfair pedestal she'd been placed on. But here's the bigger lesson. Exposure is also where greatness is forged. Caitlin Clark has been exposed every single night since her debut. Defenses swarm her, critics hound her, expectations suffocate her, and instead of crumbling, she adapts. Each game teaches her how to thrive under fire. That's why her rough nights don't stick, they transform into growth. Paige now faces the same crossroads. Will she fold under the weight of that exposure? Or will she learn from it? Because the WNBA isn't about protecting stars, it's about revealing who can withstand the fire. For fans in the league, this moment is a reminder too. We can't shortcut greatness, we can't crown stars before they're tested, and we can't let hype dictate the narrative without performance to back it up. Exposure is a ruthless teacher, but it's also the fairest one. It gives you exactly what you've earned and nothing more. Paige's exposure wasn't just about her, it was about us, how we consume sports, how we fall for media spin, and how quickly we forget that greatness has to be proven, not gifted. When the dust settles, when the headlines move on, when the hype machine shifts to its next target, only one thing remains: legacy. And in the Paige versus Caitlin saga, the legacy being written isn't about rivalry. It's about the separation of myth from reality and the crowning of the one player whose impact no manufactured story can erase. Caitlin Clark is building a legacy the hard way, under relentless scrutiny, against defenses that treat her like a one-woman army. And with the entire future of the WNBA placed squarely on her shoulders, every night, she's not just playing basketball, she's carrying an audience, a franchise, and a sport into a new era. That's why her legacy will endure, because it's being tested in the fire again and again and proving unbreakable. Paige Bueckers, on the other hand, faces a crossroads. Her story isn't finished, but this chapter is a reminder of how fragile legacies can be when they're built on shaky foundations. If she learns from this exposure, if she reshapes her game and grows under the pressure, she still has a chance to carve out her place. But if she doesn't, if she continues to exist more in media storylines than in defining performances, her name will fade into the long list of players who could have been. The lesson for fans in the league is bigger than either player. Women's basketball doesn't need manufactured rivalries. It needs authentic ones, born from the grind, from the blood and sweat of real competition. Caitlin Clark will eventually find her bird, her Serena, her true foil. But it won't be handed to her in a press release. It will come when another player rises to meet her on the court, possession after possession, season after season. Paige had the chance to be that, and right now, she's shown she isn't there yet. So what's the legacy in the making? It's not Paige versus Caitlin, it's Caitlin versus history. She's chasing records, rewriting expectations, and forcing the world to take women's basketball seriously in a way it never has before. That's not a rivalry, that's revolution. And revolutions don't need equals, they need leaders. Paige may one day catch up, or maybe someone else will. But for now, the story is clear. The legacy belongs to Clark. And until someone proves otherwise, she's not just the face of the league, she's the standard everyone else is trying and failing to meet.